Hi, I'm Liz Lang. Today I'm joined by some very exciting guests. These are women and moms who were inspired by their own motherhood to start their own businesses. I can't wait to meet them. Today I'm joined by four very successful, passionate, and determined women. They all share in common that after the birth of their own children, they were inspired to start businesses that seek to support, connect, and inform other moms and moms-to-be. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. Now let's have all these wonderful moms introduce themselves.
I'm Erica Lyon, and I'm the director of Real Birth, New York City's childbirth education and postpartum support center.
I'm Katie Fogarty. I'm one of the co-creators of Playgroup Productions.
And I'm Megan O'Hara, her partner, in The Real Deal on Breastfeeding, which is a resource for mothers to give them all the practical and emotional support they need in the difficult time when you're just learning how to breastfeed.
I'm Marissa Thalberg, founder and president of Executive Moms, an organization which provides networking, support, and unique resources for women who are both mothers and professionals to help them thrive in both roles.
Ladies, I've asked you all here to join me today because although of course we know that being a new mom is a very exciting time in your life, it's also kind of a frightening time and an isolating time for many moms. But yet during this critical time, you all managed to start new businesses, which is also a daunting thing to do at any point. So help us understand how you do it. Let's start with what inspired you to start your business. How did you all get started? Erica.
What inspired me to start Real Birth was I had a really great job, and I was running the childbirth education and postpartum support programs at the Elizabeth Seton Childbearing Center, and the hospital that backed that clinical facility decided to close it down, and essentially I got laid off and had no job and really wanted to keep doing what I was doing. And felt like, well, I've been running these programs for a long time, and this community resource is really established and just kind of got thrown away. So I want to continue doing this. And it was much more sort of looking around and realizing I'm not going to be able to get a job doing what I love. So I'm going to have to go out there and make it.
Well, that's very inspiring, really. What about the two of you?
Meg and I are old college friends and had our first two children basically at the same time and shared a lot of the sort of the ups and downs of becoming new moms. And when we had our second, we were both a little nervous about breastfeeding again because we had a bumpy start the first time, and it was a lot harder than we thought it would be. And we said there should be something out there that helps new moms succeed at this and helps them really hit the ground running. And we combined our backgrounds, Meg's background in film production and entertainment production. I have a background in television, a master's in broadcast journalism, and said, let's create the resource that's missing. Let's give women the information that they need. And so we conceived the idea of The Real Deal on Breastfeeding.
Fantastic.
Also, you don't know how many kids you're going to have, and for me personally too, the first experience with breastfeeding just did not go well at all. I barely made it to 3 months, and there were all these contraptions that I had to use. And it was heartbreaking, and I knew it was going to be heartbreaking, but I didn't quite realize it until I had my second. And then I really understood what I was missing. And it was that sort of very practical experience and practical heartbreak that we very much wanted other women to avoid. And that was sort of the birth of our business. And it's been great.
That's phenomenal, and I think we all know as moms and all the moms out there how hard breastfeeding is, and it's not always spoken of or taught correctly, and you think it's going to be something that you can just do, and it's certainly not. So that's great. Marissa.
Well, similarly, you ask about inspiration, and I think what I found was Executive Moms was absolutely born out of what started as a very personal need. I had my daughter. I did find the beginning of motherhood very challenging. Just when I was starting to get my footing, I was about ready to go back to work. And one of the interesting things for me, even being based in New York, where you think so many women work, is that I wasn't finding the other women like myself with whom I really wanted to feel that sense of support and connection so that I could feel just a little bit more equipped to handle this balance that I was going to be accomplishing throughout the rest of my life. And so the more I talked to people and said, well, where is something like this for me to join? The reaction was, I don't know, but we need it and you need to go start it. So inadvertently, I wound up giving birth again, is how I felt about it. Perhaps we all felt that way, to a bouncing baby organization. And that's kind of how it started.
So often I think women ask me when they write to me about these sorts of things, okay, so you have this great idea, perhaps born out of a real need, as it seems that we all had that. Where'd you get the financing? Was money an issue? Was funding an issue?
Money was a huge issue. I was a single mom. I was unemployed. I, didn't have nearly enough savings to then throw into a huge risk, and wrote up a business plan. And the advantage that I had was that because I had been running programs very similar, I had some idea of how this would work and what it could potentially do and what potential costs would be. And the business plan really helped me organize my thought process, and went to Small Business Administration with the business plan saying, look, this is my idea, and got a really good friend to guarantor me. And SBA was like, this is great. You know exactly what you're doing. You're going to have no problem. Here are the banks. Go get it. Have fun. And I got turned down over and over and over and over and over. And finally it was just like, okay, this is all silly and baloney. And had to start fundraising. And word went out in the community of what I was trying to do. And people started coming forward. I'll loan you $1,000. I'll loan you $1,000. I'll loan you $1,000. And it was purely on my reputation. And I put the whole enterprise together at 50% budget. My original business plan, hopefully being a whole other thing. And just sort of, I often think of the phrase my grandma used when she was building her house, which was they put it together with bat spit and paper. And that's how it felt at first. And it was a real lesson to me in terms of where there's a will, there's a way. And I wasn't going to let those community resources die. It was too important to me.
Money is always an issue. It is absolutely, there's never enough of it. And Meg and I put our company together really on a shoestring. It's self-financed to a degree, and with the support of our husbands who are our business partners. We're sort of the creative front, and we develop the product and the face and do a lot of the marketing, but we also have the support, both emotional and financial, of our husbands. But money certainly is an issue. We're not able to do as much as we would like in terms of advertising.
Right, and in terms of the production of the actual product, I called in favors. I've been in the entertainment business for 12 years, 13 years, and I picked shooters who I'd hired in the past and said, please, 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 and I begged the edit facility that I love and said, won't you please do this on spec? And everybody, it was just incredible how everybody came together to help us purely on spec, and that, when you add it all up at the end, it's thousands upon thousands of dollars. So again, it's sort of your reputation in the industry and having, done good work and promising work. People don't want to do something that's not going to go anywhere. So, knowing that this would become something real, we were able to get people on board, and it was just so wonderful the way it worked out. Our shooter, his wife had breastfed twins, and two of the sound guys, their wives had breastfed, and the edit facility, the editor and his wife just had a baby. It just kind of was very loving and nurturing the way it all came together.
So Marissa, what about you?
Well, from a financial standpoint, I had to make a pretty difficult choice, and I think it's an interesting one, which is that I didn't feel that I was in a position to just drop this successful corporate career I had, and it was one that was maintaining our lifestyle in order to go completely pursue my dreams. So I decided that I was going to try to do both at the same time. So throughout the process of having Executive Moms, I've actually maintained my career in marketing and advertising while building this organization on the side. So that has had certain obvious advantages and certain obvious disadvantages. And the obvious advantages are that I haven't had to worry about it immediately paying me a salary, especially since it is much more of a community type of organization. Of course, the disadvantage is that my time is not completely free and the resources are not always there to fully devote myself to it the way I'd like. But it has created an interesting juggle, and yet I suppose in some ways it's been a benefit in that the organization is Executive Moms. So for me, by maintaining my own executive life, it really kind of fuels and inspires a lot of the things that I'll write about for our members or will be inspired to create an event around. So while sometimes I wish I weren't managing both, in other ways I think it's had a lot of benefits. And I think it's important to realize that that can be a choice for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur but may not feel that they either can or have, the bravery to just completely jump off the ship and go in at full speed ahead. So it's worked. It's maybe not worked perfectly, but it has been a good choice for me.
That's definitely great advice for people out there that aren't ready to sort of ditch it all and go the entrepreneur route. You can sort of get your feet wet at the same time by keeping a steady stream of income and another career going, certainly at least at the beginning. So I think that's all really helpful.
Yeah, and also I think because we all have businesses that are very much about supporting women, it does put a different spin on it than if we were just, having a business that was purely about selling products. So I've been very fortunate that the employers that I've had have actually seen this as, another feather in my cap and something that they can be proud of too. And you don't always find that in corporate America. So I do feel like part of how this equation has worked for me is I've been lucky in my corporate life as well to get that kind of support.
What has become your most effective marketing tool? And I actually think that before I throw that out to the group, perhaps I'll answer that because marketing is something that's very dear to my heart at Liz Lang Maternity. I don't know about the rest of you, but as a working mom, I find that I am the best marketing tool that I have, or that we have as a brand. That I am really, somebody that my customers can relate to because I am them and they are me. I am, a mother and somebody that cares about the way that I look for a variety of reasons, because of my career prior to what I'm doing, because there are things that go on in my life that would have made it impossible as a pregnant woman to just sit around all day in leggings and a big t-shirt. So I find that I become sort of the face of the brand and somebody that who can very effectively communicate with the customers and get the message out there. Is that something that you all find, or are there other ways that you market your brand?
I totally relate to what you're saying in terms of sort of being that public persona and how people relate to that and how you're representative of what you're doing. There are days where I go into work and I feel like all I've got going for me is the color lipstick that I'm wearing and the fact that the shirt is somewhat not too wrinkled. And I find, though, in terms of working with pregnant and postpartum moms in sort of an information, emotional support arena, that our biggest tool is grassroots, and moms talk about us, and we develop tremendous loyalty with them because we have given them access to information and emotional support that they couldn't find anywhere else. And so it's really grassroots, word of mouth, and then those moms get in the chat rooms and they start talking and word spreads, and it's like online fire. And that has been our hugest tool.
I'm so glad you say that because I think people don't realize that you don't need a big ad budget, particularly when you are marketing to women, which we all are. It's amazing how women talk. I always used to make that joke that the beginning of my business was like that old commercial, like, and she told a friend and so on and so on and so on, because that's exactly what can happen, and it is so powerful.
Well, for the Real Deal on breastfeeding, absolutely. The mom-to-mom grapevine has been tremendous for us. People are telling their friends about this resource, they're reading about it, and they're recommending it to their friends. We found a lot of new moms are buying this because they've discovered it, they're hearing about it from their lactation consultant or their doctor, and that's something that sits well with them, but they're buying it also as shower gifts for their girlfriends, because a lot of women who don't even need it for themselves any longer say, I had a tough time, and I think my friend could use some advice and a little information to really have a different experience for me. So the mom-to-mom grapevine has been really one of our biggest pushes.
Right. I would definitely agree with that, and I also think unlike your experience and your experience where you are sort of the face of your product, for us it's very different. Our product is in some ways our best marketing tool because it's unlike anything that's out there. It's a pure mixture of very, very practical advice, emotional support, and it's one of the few things out there in terms of video and DVDs that actually acknowledges it's not always great. It's not always rosy. It's a very honest and funny and humorous depiction. I mean, our biggest goal was to get the point across and give a new mom everything she would need to know from A to Z to have success with breastfeeding, but it was also, let's make this entertaining. Let's make this something that I would want to sit down and watch, that if I'm having trouble, I would go at 3 in the morning and feel okay about turning it back on. So we are not really the public face, and we are not what is carrying the business. It's more the product itself. And I think that's why moms are talking about it, is because it's something very different. And that's worked for us. It's been great.
Fabulous. Yeah. Marissa?
Well, Liz, like you, marketing is near and dear to my heart too. It's been my corporate career to do marketing and spend millions of dollars on advertising budgets, and yet with Executive Moms, obviously that wasn't going to be financially feasible, but I didn't really think it was necessary. I really believed that the right way to grow this was, just like you're saying, through word of mouth, real viral kind of growth, and that has really helped. I would say the other nuance to this is that we have had some success with some tactical public relations, and in particular because of the kind of things that we're doing. If we field a survey, for example, among our members about a topic that we think is really interesting, it can also debunk some of the popular misconceptions about working mothers that are out there. We'll field that, and so it accomplishes two things. On the one hand, it's really helping to put some important information out there. On the other hand, of course, it's helping to market the Executive Moms brand. So I would say that's the other thing that's been effective for us.
I do think that public relations, which Marissa just began to touch upon, is so important, and something that I really discovered early on, that even if you don't have the money or the resources to actually have a true public relations firm working for you, which what new entrepreneur does, that just by aggressively pursuing editors in magazines or newspapers or even electric media, TV shows that you think make sense for your product, that you actually can get that product out there, and that it is amazing how powerful that is, how one mention someplace could have your phone ringing off the hook at the beginning. I'm sure you all have found that. So I think that people are always daunted by the idea of how much it costs to advertise somewhere, but public relations, on the other hand, can be free if you do it yourself. And
we live in a 24-hour news cycle. The media is constantly looking for things to fill the void. And if you are smart about keeping up with what's going on in current events, there's all the buzz now about the new book, Mommyhood in the Age of Anxiety, or Mothering in the Age of Anxiety, or there's a lot of news today about breast milk, whether or not there's certain pollutants that are getting in. You need to see these stories in the news and then get on the phones and call people and say, I've got a great product that could help women, sort of get through that anxiety that seems to be plaguing them, or I've got a product that can help moms feel good about breast milk and feel good about this kind of relationship with their child. And I think all entrepreneurs need to keep their eyes to the ground for that kind of opportunity and seize it.
Sometimes as women we're afraid to ask, and I know that I feel that way all the time. I'm much better when someone's asking me to do something for them than when I have to ask.
Totally.
But there are so many opportunities on a marketing level with businesses such as ours, or with new businesses, to look for reciprocity. We have with Executive Moms sort of an e-zine that we write every week, and I pick topics just like any other media outlet would that I think are interesting. But there are cases where if it's an instance where they can then in turn support or communicate Executive Moms in a natural way, that I've started to realize, maybe I should just ask and see if they'll do that. There's nothing wrong with that. And so sometimes it's as simple as that, just being a little bit more forward about your business.
we've all learned a lot along the way. I'm sure there are things we look back on now and cringe, but certainly they were learning experiences. Is there anything that you can share that you wish you had done differently, or that you learned from, or that actually you did well and that's a good tip to pass on to others?
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it was allowing yourself that you're going to make mistakes, and just knowing that it's going to happen. And sort of recognizing that perhaps that moment of inspiration is also very similar to a moment of insanity. That, yeah, you're going to have that one moment of inspiration, and it's going to be a lot of hard work afterwards. A couple of really practical things I remember learning very early. I remember being a couple weeks into this and cleaning the bathroom and changing the toilet paper roll and thinking, oh my goodness, I just created another space where I'm the only one who changes the toilet paper roll. and this is going to have to get delegated, because I can't manage an entire education center if I'm in here cleaning. Mm-hmm. And learning those really primal lessons really early so that you can be more effective. And really practical things like when you're negotiating a space. Like one thing I learned the hard way was to negotiate a lease abatement, so that if your landlord doesn't come through with something, you can then deduct that cost if you need to fix something that they didn't come through on. So sort of looking at those professional things that may end up costing you money that you just don't know ahead of time, and talking to other people who run businesses so that then you get the heads up. But a few very practical things in terms of concrete things, and also sort of just allowing for that emotional process. sort of budgeting that extra because you know you're going to make mistakes.
I think one of the things that we did really well was to ally ourselves with experts. Meg and I are not lactation consultants. We're just two moms that nursed our kids. So we found a wonderful lactation consultant. We found a terrific doctor, and we really try to get the word out to the lactation and childbirth education community that this resource existed. And I think that really helped give the product some credibility, and it helped us get the word out to the people who'd be interested in knowing about it. I think one of the things that we could have done a little differently, because we were so just on a mission to try to let as many women as possible have the information we wish we had had, I think we really concentrated our initial distribution efforts in a lot of the smaller retailers. And it was wonderful to walk into a store that was a mom-created business and put our mom-created product on the shelf, and there was wonderful synergy with that. But I think in terms of growing our business, we should have been a little more aggressive initially about reaching out to some of the larger retailers. There's a sense that maybe they're not as soulful, but you're certainly going to get the information and the product out to more people that way.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Very, very important. And
That's very true. I would say the thing that I learned the most is that it's going to take more time than you could ever imagine, and that might be a really great thing. I mean, it's not like you, as everybody here knows, you don't have an idea and then it's come to fruition a month later. There's so much. Well, maybe you. I don't know. I don't know how long. Exactly. All right. Well, I don't know. But for us, it was a very slow burn from the time that we had the idea to the time that we got the people together, and we had chosen our moms that participated in our tape, and we kind of did everything slowly because we had so many other things going on. To very
3-month-olds. We both had new babies while we were creating this video too.
Right, brand new babies, still breastfeeding. We were both still. I mean, I remember with a breast pump on the set, just like, excuse me, we need to.
We would fight for the bathroom so we could pump during the shoot.
Right, and so I think like just allow for more time than you think it might take, and know that is not a detriment to the final product, because I think for us it actually made it better.
Reflecting now, I think the parts that I feel most proud of and would do exactly the same way again, probably where my marketing hat actually came to play very well, which is that whether you have a service or a product, you do have a brand, and I just instinctively had a very clear sense of what I wanted this brand, Executive Moms, to be, what its personality was, and how it was completely different from what was out there. I really wanted it to be sophisticated and girlfriend to girlfriend. And so I think even though I did everything on a shoestring, from designing the logo to the website, everything had to kind of meet that aesthetic and that idea of what the brand was. And that was a really good decision, because time and time again, what I hear women say they like so much about Executive Moms is they identify with it, they like it, it makes them feel good. And so that has kind of created, I think, a platform from which we can continue to build, because it's still a growing business, but the brand feels really strong to me. And I think in turn, it's allowed us to bring in some amazing corporate sponsors. So those have been sort of the best parts of Executive Moms. I think the things I wish I've done a little differently, or maybe been able to delegate a little better, find more support myself, physician heal thyself, and perhaps just have maybe known a few things that I know now about how to incorporate a business and the legal parts and all the logistics of starting a business that you kind of have to just learn as you do it and make mistakes.
let's talk a little bit about the idea of starting a business at the same time that you do have young children. I think that's something we all share here, and it's something that people are always curious about. You've given such wonderful tips on other things. Any tips on that? How do you make it all work?
It's always really important to debunk the idea of supermom, that you're juggling the work, you're juggling the kids, you're juggling the relationship. And there are days where you're really good at one and you suck at the other two, and other days where you're really good at two of them and one is really off, and that it's a constant ebb and flow. And you're doing all of these things because you need to present that you're a whole person. And I think that's sort of the first step. I think that for me, in terms of juggling the mom and the work, I was very aware in starting this that there would be a toll for the first year. that it was going to take an unbelievable amount of time, and that my kids were old enough, they're 7 and 10 right now, and they were old enough that we could sustain that a little bit, that they could bear with me through that 1 year of transition. And rituals became really important. Things like dinner time, where we would all reconnect at the end of the day, that I was there at bedtime to tuck them in, which is a big chatterbox time for both of them in terms of processing and reconnecting. And just the time that I did have with them would be quality time. And just making sure that it was quality time, even if the quality was at the level of, okay, it's an at-home day, and we're just playing chess and watching a movie and having popcorn and being together. And maybe we don't get to the moment this week, but and just actually making it some quality connective time, and knowing that there was going to need to be a little bit of repair. And it was a very calculated process just in that first year. And it's really nice to get to the place where you see them starting to see the impact you're having, and seeing what the response is, and knowing their mom's doing something really great. And also being able to have the conversations with them that strengthen your relationship in terms of what you're showing them and who you are with them. So it's a process. Parenting is a process.
Excellent, excellent advice.
Creating the real deal on breastfeeding while having a newborn and a toddler was certainly a juggling act. And it took me a while to figure out how to manage the work-life balance. I had to learn how to shut the computer off when my daughter came home from school, so I wasn't answering her questions over my shoulder while I was emailing. I had to learn to do stuff when my son was napping. I work on this project every day. I don't have childcare every day. I have a babysitter 2 or 3 days a week, and I try to maximize that. But one of the lessons that I learned was really to try to separate my work and my kids a little bit more carefully, because I need to give both the attention that they deserve. And as you said, Eric, I had to learn that I couldn't always give both the attention that I wanted to give them, and I had to learn how to be a little bit more at peace with myself about that, and not try to be, super mom, bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and I think I'm still struggling with that. I think starting a new business is like being a mom. It's a continuing evolution, and you'll never do it perfectly, but you'll do it as well as you can.
Right. For me, I think in terms of the decision to start a new business while you have a newborn and maybe you have other kids, which we both did, and so for me it was really sort of it was not an easy decision and it was not an easy route, but it was definitely a nice time for me to take a break from sort of the rat race of regular production. It was like, well, wait a minute, maybe I should take all of these skills and focus them on something that we could grow and something that we've been talking about. And also it's all I thought about. It's all I thought about when I had my kids. I mean, it was like I have to find an outlet for this somewhere, because I'm thinking and breathing and eating and talking about this baby 24/7, and I know that there are many women out there who are doing the same thing. So everything just sort of fit at once, but it's not easy. I mean, you always feel like one is suffering, and that's just, I think, the nature of the game, and I think it's just part of being a mom, actually. You're never ever going to be as good as your own mother. You're never going to do everything perfect. You're always going to feel like you're letting someone down, and in fact, you really aren't, but that's the way it feels. And so whether it's this business or another job, I think that the emotions are all still there. At least it's what we found.
Feel as a mom myself and someone that has my own business that I'm often guilty, even though, of course, one of my big tips would be give up the guilt and don't be guilty. But of course, I'm often guilty of either about the business or about the kids. But I do sometimes, in moments of clarity and sanity, tell myself that sort of a lot of what you're saying, I do give them both, the best I can. I do think I'm setting a good example for my children in being a working mom. I do think that there are a lot of moms out there, and I think that it's all fine. I don't judge it, who perhaps don't have their own businesses, but perhaps work in some senses harder than I do because they're not masters of their own destiny. So they could be on a business trip, many weeks of the year, or a lot of late nights, whereas my distraction is more sort of what you were talking about, forcing myself to turn off the computer or not glance at the BlackBerry, but at least I am able to do that what I need and want to, so that helps me. But it's always a challenge. We all only have a finite amount of time. We all only have a finite amount of energy, and definitely something always gives. In my case, I find it's social life and friendships, but but But, you know.
Well, I'll throw this out because I know it's so hard to really assuage that guilt, but with Executive Moms, the very first survey we fielded, and it was among women just like all of us, and all of whom had come to executivemoms.com and signed up. And the very first thing we asked and found out was that 97% of the women who answered this said they actually feel that having a career or being a mother with a career makes them a better mother, which I thought was startling just because it was so overwhelming. And I think if you try to get at what the underlying reasons are, is that you can feel a sense of satisfaction from having this other part of your life. And you know, when you're a new mom, is your 3-month-old really perceiving that? Maybe not, but when they're 3 or when they're 13, then invariably they are going to feel a sense of pride and see you as a role model. And that's what I've really heard from the members, who I find so inspiring. The members of Executive Moms say they really feel great about from having a career. So motherhood seems like a very natural time to think about making a change in your career, starting a business. We get inspired by being mothers, and in turn it sends us off on a whole new path, and I think that can be a very positive thing.
Well, on that note, I have certainly found all of you very inspiring here today, and I thank you so much for being here. It's been so wonderful for me to get to know all of you and hear some of your tips and advice. Very helpful. So thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yes. You need
Great
to do it again.
meet you. I know.
Thank you. This was fun.
Nice to see you.
Really
great to meet you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this conversation as informative and inspiring as I did.